The notorious Disc 2 begins. As a side note, Square wanted to end Xenogears at Disc 1 because it was going over budget and over time, but Takahashi pushed for a conclusion, and while the result was underfunded and incomplete, it did a good job at closing most of the plot and left the players feeling satisfied from a story perspective. The crash of Weltal causes grave injury to both Faye and Ellie. While in a coma, we see Faye sitting down on a chair, remembering a former self, Lacan, painting Sophia at Nissan. Faye does not want to finish the painting because it means he won't be able to spend any more time with Sophia, so he makes excuses in order to delay its completion. We then see the same memory but from Ellie's perspective. Weltal luckily crashed near Tora Melchior's house in the woods. Tora is one of the three sages of Shavat, the others being Isaac Balthazar and Gaspar Uzuki. Tora continued the nanotechnology research that Kim started. Tora also taught what he knew to Krelian. He put Faye and Ellie in nanoreactors, and it took a period of 3 weeks to heal them, but it saved their lives. Tora notes that while the nanomachines can heal wounds, they can also be used to create things. He also states that the nanomachines can remove the seal that exists on all humans. The seal he's referring to are the genetic limiters implanted in all humans that are born. He also equips Faye with a device that allows it to be controlled, and with the help of Balthazar, applies that same technology to Weltal, now called Weltal 2, but with some added nanomachine modifications to the gear as well. Shavat is holding a peace settlement between Avet and Kislev, but Solaris is planning on attacking Shavat, so they ask for Faye's help, while Ellie and Emeralda plan to go to the mass driver facility to shoot the nanomachines into the sky to remove everyone's limiters. Melchior speaks with Graf here and acknowledges that Graf was the one who brought Faye and Ellie to Melchior in order to save their lives. The Gazelle are upset that Faye didn't die, but Krelian said Ellie was on board too and he needed her alive. The mother the Gazelle are referring to is Miang, and that they don't need Ellie, the antitype. Krelian corrects them that they need both in order for it to be complete, since the original mother was one part Miang and one part Ellie. Krelian sends Ramses after Faye, and Faye defeats Ramses once again. This time, Ramses loses all confidence and is left with only pure resentment towards Faye. Ellie and Emeralda depart for the mass driver facility. The actual facility is a relic from the Zeboium era. It was used to launch nuclear and biological weapons. They are eventually successful in launching the nanomachines into the sky, which remove the limiters from the population. Shortly afterwards, Solaris releases Fort Hurricane to take out Nissan. The party heads to Kislev in an attempt to stop it, and we learn that the center facility in Nortune is actually a disguised battleship, the Yggdrasil 4. It's a massive ship that uses the Yggdrasil 3 as its central circuit. The ship is then used to destroy Fort Hurricane. After Fort Hurricane was destroyed, the continent of Ignis was finally at peace and unified as peace agreements were signed. However, the nanomachines which removed the limiters had an unintended side effect. Krelian anticipated that Faye and the others would remove the limiters from humans, so when Etranank was destroyed, he released a virus into the atmosphere so that if anyone's limiter was removed, they would turn into whales. The Gazelle here are under the impression that humans are naturally turning into whales despite not having used the key because the resurrection of Deus is close, but in reality it's because Krelian released the virus in the atmosphere to force the evolution. They did note that not every human turned into a whale, and that's because evolution over the 10,000 year history has allowed many of them to escape their fate, which is the primary reason Krelian released the virus, as the key itself would not be enough. Miang here blames Krelian for allowing the nanomachine technology Faye used to release the limiters on the people, but Krelian notes that he anticipated this and admits he released the virus to counteract this anyway. She notes that it's different than what the Gazelle intended, as they were relying on just using the Gaeta key. The Ark he refers to as Mahanan, the resting place of Deus and the supercomputer Razel's tree. Miang doesn't care how Deus is resurrected as long as the end result is effective. The Soylent system at this point was repurposed to house the mutated humans with the guise of being a place where the pain would be eased, but the true intention was to take those wells, break their molecules down, and merge them into a giant sulfal mass to be used as a weapon. The sulfal mass, an amalgamation of former humans, is killed by the party. Ellie projects her inner Sophia and gives a speech to the mutated humans, offers them her own flesh to ease their pain, then the party goes and destroys the rest of the Soylent facilities. The less mutated wells were able to be restored using Tora's nanomachines, while the more severe wells weren't able to be restored, but no longer fed off one another. Sophia was an icon, not a person. Even as Sophia, her name was still Ellie, but she was a mother, both in the sense of being part of the original mother, which gave birth to all life on the planet, but also in her maturity into a woman, and thus the antitype. The Gazelle talk about humans gathering in Nissan, being cured, and not being suitable parts for Deus anymore, but they still have the Gaeta key, which will force them to turn into Wells again. Cain, however, prevents this, as he wants humans to be free from their fate. When Cain talks about the Gazelle's free will, he's referring to the fact that the Ministry are no longer humans with any kind of will. Rather, they are simply zeros and ones and are essentially a computer program which has a sole purpose of performing the task it was designed for. Faye then seeks the remaining anima relics. There are 12 anima relics in total. At the moment in the game, Ramses, Krelian, Graf, and Miang are all aligned with their anima relics, and the Gazelle states that 500 years ago, during the Solaris War, 4 relics were aligned, although one of those is currently aligned with Miang. The Gazelle need the anima relics to be aligned so they can return to their bodies by taking over the bodies of Faye's anima-capable friends. One of the relics is located in the Zeboim-era underground facility. They find the anima relic Joseph, and it aligns with Billy's gear. On their way out, they battle the elements in a battle with an homage to the Transformers. After they beat them, the elements realize that Faye and company are not really their enemies, and the resulting loss became an epiphany for them about what their goals truly are. The Gazelle need to remove Cain, as he won't allow their plan to succeed. The other one they're referring to is Faye. The Gazelle call Miang Mother, as she was half the original mother which gave birth to all humanity. The countervailing existence to Cain is Ramses. Being a clone of Cain, he's able to kill him. Dominia overhears this and wants to warn Ramses. She and the rest of the elements are fiercely loyal to Ramses because he saved their lives, but I'll talk more about that later. Dominia tries to warn Ramses, but he's so hell-bent on killing Faye at this point that there's nothing that will stop him until he achieves it. He attacks Nissan looking for Faye, but he's not there. He takes Ellie hostage and tries to kill her, but her powers as the anti-type bring him down. I spoke a little bit about Ramses' backstory in 1, so I won't go too much in depth here, but remember that he was created in a test tube to be an artificial contact as well as a clone of Cain, but really his sole purpose was to eliminate Cain, as Krelian and Miang knew that he would side with the humans and hinder their plan and had to be eliminated. Ramses was a long, thought-out plan. His resentment towards Faye was instilled at him as early as when he was a fetus growing in a tank, and that feeling of never being adequate enough is what drove him to his success after starting from the bottom and rising all the way to the top. The Gazelle are now pushing him over the edge and entice him with the ultimate power if he kills Cain. Because Cain exists, Krelian says, Ramses' power is cut in half. But if Cain is killed, Ramses will have all of the power. The party makes their way to Anima Dungeon 2. This area was created a little less than 10,000 years ago by the first generation of humans that worshipped Cain as a god. Here, we can see a mural on the wall of Cain in the flashback we saw when he killed Ellie. The party runs into Hammer, who is fused with a machine as part of the M plan. The party solemnly defeats him, and he is gone for good. The long plan of Ramses killing Cain comes into fruition, and he fulfills his purpose and eliminates Cain. Cain was merely existing on a thread of his existence, having lived for 10,000 years only because of Krelian's technology, and Ramses, wanting all the power to himself, was manipulated into ending his existence because he was a hindrance to Miang and the Gazelle's plan of resurrecting Deus. The Gaeta key is now used. The purpose of the key was to forcibly mutate humans into Wells as Deus intended. All those who were saved previously have now been forcibly mutated as destiny requires them to be parts of Deus. This also allows for Mahanan, the bridge of the Eldritch, to rise from the ocean. The party assembles to go after Deus, but Faye is concerned for Ellie. Faye does not want Ellie to come as he fears she will lose her life. This upsets Ellie as she wants to feel like she has a purpose, and his callous attitude towards her sends her crying to her room. Faye comforts her, they make love, and Faye departs to save the world. Inside Mahanan, the party discovers the nucleus of the Deus system. This is what we see during the intro of the game that existed on the ship. The party ultimately defeats it and moves on. This is not the ultimate form of Deus, but rather the rotted form that existed on the ship that was buried underneath the sea for 10,000 years. Making their way through the ship, they encounter Razel's tree. This is a supercomputer that exists on the ship, which contains all of the knowledge about both Deus, the Zohar, and even the information about the humans that created it. Graf shows up and encounters the party. The party is crucified, and Ellie is baited into showing up in order to save her friends. They attack her until she is nearly defeated, and she unleashes her inner powers. She saved her friends, but she herself is captured. Krelian, no longer needing any of the services of the Gazelle once the Gaeta key was used, removes their memory banks, effectively killing them. Wise Man convinces a distraught Faye to save Ellie, and he makes his way for Merkava. Kelvana and the other elements come to peace with Faye, having only wanted what was best for Ramses, and allow Faye and his friends to enter Merkava, a ship created by Krelian with the intention of transporting Deus throughout the universe. Faye encounters Ramses again, and Faye is finally made aware of what Ramses is and why he hated Faye so much. Despite the elements trying to bring him to reality, he resists. Faye and his party defeats him, and Ramses forever gives up on trying to eliminate Faye. The party encounters Miang's gear, which we saw back in Solaris, and defeats her, despite her gear being regenerated from Krelian's nanomachines. Ramses, feeling used and manipulated, takes revenge upon Krelian and Miang and stabs them with his sword. However, because she is essentially a computer program, she is designed that she cannot kill herself, and Miang is now able to enter Ellie's body as they are both one and the same. She shoots Faye, and Krelian returns to a standing position fully healed thanks to his nanomachine body. Having consumed some of the anima relics attained by Faye's party, Deus begins to activate, which will start the process of absorbing the ready and necessary parts required for its resurrection. Faye dives into the submerging Deus, and in doing so, enters a coma. Merkava rises and devastates the surface of the planet while Deus begins its campaign of assimilation. Notably, a mass assimilation of every human was not Deus's original plan. Krelian's motives, which I will explain in the last video of this series, changed the plan to assimilate all humans on the planet. Merkava is also equipped with mobile weapons called the Seraph Angels. The Seraph Angels are the souls of the humans absorbed by Deus, which are then manipulated with nanomachines to turn into weapons. The terminal interface weapons, as the game refers to them as, can be interpreted as the aligned Omnigears, which there are 12 of, but now also include the Seraph Angels as well. Faye and Weltal are discovered by Citan and company, but Faye is still in a comatose state. Fearing a return of Id, they freeze Faye in carbonite. Queen Zephyr speaks about one of the last events of the Chvet-Solaris War. At this time, the Gazelle Ministry and Miang did not get along, because the former believed humans were ready to be assimilated, while the latter did not. A deal was struck with Solaris and Chvet to end the war. Solaris would provide Miang for Chvet to take as prisoner, and in return, Chvet would put Ellie and her army into a battle that they would be set up to fail in. While Chvet had Miang in custody, Ellie, or Sophia, seeing her army surrounded, sacrificed herself in the Excalibur in order to give her army a route to safety. While this deal was intended to end the war, it did so ultimately unaware of the consequences the death Sophia would have for the subsequent generations to come. The death is what sparked Krelian to, as he states, build God with his own hands, and also leads Lacan to merge prematurely with the Zohar and become Graph. In Faye's mind, while he's suspended in carbonite, he speaks internally to Id. Id reveals to Faye a fourth persona, created by the persona Faye. This persona, which does not have a name, is the persona which is in control of the coward, Faye, and Id. Id manipulated the fourth persona into giving him control, but in the meantime, we are at a campfire with Roni Fatima, his brother Rene, Lacan, and Krelian. At this moment during the Chvet-Solaris War, with Sophia not having sacrificed herself yet, all four are in allegiance to Nisan, a supporter of Chvet during the war. There is build-up between Lacan and Krelian about the jealousy the latter feels over Ellie choosing to love Faye over Krelian. On a mission, Faye fails to protect Ellie and she becomes injured. Kneeling by her bed, he confesses his love to her while Krelian overhears her affirmed response. Shortly after this, the elders of Chvet set her up in the battle which she sacrificed in. Dan and Midori encounter a frozen Faye. It's hinted a few times throughout the game that Midori has telepathic powers, and it's confirmed here when she is able to predict Id's awakening at Faye, despite his current form of being frozen in carbonite. Id begins his search for the Zohar, and the party followed them to the site where the Zohar fell to the planet. Inside of Faye's mind, Id reveals that the fourth persona contains memories from Id that he wants access to, as Id only has all of the traumatic memories and the lies that the coward shows him. The flashes of memories that Faye saw as early as Lahan with the swinging pendant were purposefully implemented into Faye's mind in order to weaken his psyche enough for Id to take control of the body. Id wants to reach the Zohar, or more accurately the Way of Existence, for the purpose of becoming solely dominant of the body and cutting off the other three personas entirely. Id successfully made contact with the Way of Existence, and as the party encounters him, Weltal evolves into Xenogears Id. Wiseman shows up and explains that it is the Zohar which powers all of the gears, as well as the ether powers some of the people possess. Id reveals that Wiseman is Khan, Faye's father. Id is filled with rage over his existence, while Khan tries to talk him down while they battle each other. Faye enters the consciousness of Id for the first time, and although he finally understands why Id is the way he is and is ready to merge his personalities into Id's, A voice, seemingly of the fourth persona, reminds him that Ellie is still in danger, and Faye decides to save her instead. Faye is let into the coward's persona, where he watches the same happy memory on repeat. Remember that it is a persona that is entirely devoid of any happy memories because the other personalities won't share it with him. Id notes that because he is the contact, Graf sought his powers in an attempt to possess his body in order to become a true contact once more, since his last attempt fractured him and is no longer in possession of his original body. Aside from the physical trauma of the experiments which caused Id to be formed as a persona, the personality we know as the coward, or the original Faye before any other personalities were formed, unleashed his latent contact powers after feeling helpless that his mother, formerly Karen but now Miang, was not helping as Graf was killing his father Khan. These powers the coward unleashed, he believed, killed his mom, and he offloaded that guilt onto it as well. Faye, speaking with the coward, notes that the reality he sees is not what really happened, as the coward wants to blame Id for the death of his mother. Faye remarks that sadness and happiness are normal parts of one's personality and shouldn't be isolated from one another. The true memory is shown to everyone, including Id, which shows that Karen regained control over her body and stepped in front of the coward to prevent the burst of power from turning back onto him, sacrificing herself to save her son. This highlights something the game doesn't overtly tell you, that despite Miang being programmed and mostly calculating and robotic, she is still a human being with emotions, whom as Graf later notes is starting to break free from her bond with Deus over the course of the generation of revivals. He realizes now that he doesn't want to live in a constant state of hatred, and he agrees to merge his memories in persona. In doing so, Faye becomes aware of every other Faye that was born on this planet as part of the cycle of the contacts, including Lacan. After unifying their personalities, Faye makes contact with a wave existence. The place Faye is in right now is the path of Sephiroth, and it is essentially a bridge between the third and fourth dimensions. The wave existence is essentially God, in that it is a being that controls space and time of the third dimension. When it was pulled into our dimension via the Deus-Zohar connection, it had to take a physical form inside of the Zohar to survive. Its main goal, and the reason it created Ellie, is to have Faye return the wave existence back to its own dimension through the path of Sephiroth. The wave existence reveals Ellie is its will, which it acquired from Faye when he made contact with it back on the Eldridge. In order for it to return to its own dimension, it has to merge with the parts that created it and destroy the Zohar. Specifically, it wants to merge with Faye, Ellie, and Miang. Note that the wave existence calls Miang Deus here, which is true in a way. While Miang is not physically Deus, she controls it, and the game refers to her as the body of Deus. The Zohar can only be destroyed by the contact, and now that he has made contact, he has been given the power from the wave existence to destroy the Zohar in the form of Xenogears, God's gear. It is revealed that Graf possessed Khan's body and now seeks to possess a unified Faye as well. He reveals that his plan to destroy all life on the planet is a means to break the cycle of Miang and Ellie being born again and again, even if Deus were to be destroyed. Faye could also break the cycle by destroying the Zohar, however. Faye shows no hatred towards Graf while they fight, but Deus, needing Faye's body to resurrect, starts to merge with him. Graf is able to buy Faye some time by sacrificing himself into the Zohar, because although he is not in possession of Lacan's body any longer, he still has the contact spirit. He also notes that by merging with Deus, it's the only way he can merge with Faye when he reunifies with the wave existence. Graf then tells Faye to destroy Deus and the Zohar to free humanity, and also notes that since Ellie has merged with Deus, she has all of her memories as well, including those of Miang's, and then Graf merges with Deus. Tara equips the party's gears with nanomachine disassemblers, which allow the gears to destroy the seraphs, which are composed of nanomachines, and thus would be able to regenerate any damage. Satan develops a plan to take down Merkava by shooting at it during a precise window. However, it's too effective and the ship falls to the surface, causing a massive amount of damage. With its transport ship Merkava destroyed, Deus evolves using nanotechnology and begins to terraform the whole planet into a weapon.